You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Chris Buckner.
How's it going, Robbie?
It is going all right, man. Now, please inform me a little bit about either what you do professionally or what you're interested in.
Okay. Well, right now I'm pursuing a career in doing acting. I do a variety of acting. That's sort of how I'm making my money. And I work as an actor during the haunted house season. Like if you ever go to a haunted house, you have the actors that are inside the houses or the actors that walk around and kind of get pictures and scare people. And
Yeah, the
sometimes,
guy with the chainsaw with no chain on it that always likes to scare the living
yeah,
hell out of me. And I'm like, it's just loud, but it's scary.
yeah. That's how I make some seasonal money every year. I mean, it's a crazy wild place with a bunch of crazy wild people that are sort of like a second family, and it brings in a little extra money. And you definitely have a lot of interesting experiences working in the haunt industry, as they call it. If you're a haunted house actor, you're a haunter. You work in the haunt industry, and what you're doing is called haunting.
I've always talked to a few people back in the day when I think it was around October. They actually owned their own haunted houses, and they were describing a lot of it, like not really touching the guests, but a lot of it relied on like you get those edgy people that you scare, and they try and like fight you or they try and do something. It's just not, it doesn't make it comfortable for everyone. But I always brought up this one experience I had in a haunted house. It wasn't the people that were scary. What was scary was they had a strobe light all the way in the very ending of the room, and the whole thing was like pitch black, and you're walking through this like maze. Basically, it's like walking in a hall of mirrors or something, where
Yep.
you bump into one of the fucking mirrors and crack it open with your head or something. That's how
Yeah.
they did with this haunted house. It was just nothing but string and fence everywhere, and I kept feeling like I was trapped in a cage of emotion. I just kept screaming and crying until someone finally got my mom, and yes, I was 20 when I did it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a big fan of like the mazes and the mirror rooms and things like that. I don't know. I don't think that's scary. I mean, I like Halloween and, I like horror movies and I like acting. So it seemed like, becoming a haunted actor was sort of a natural thing. And I like to be scared. I like it to be fun. I like to laugh, like to scream and then laugh. I don't want to sit there and find my way out of a maze. I don't think that's particularly scary or even fun. I mean, that's just me. Some people might like it, but I'm like, no.
When you say
um,
scream and laugh, do you mean like a psychopath, like when you're like get really scared but then you just start laughing right afterwards?
oh no, no. I was referring to the fact that like if I'm going through a haunted house, I want somebody to scare me, which usually, causes me to yell and scream for a second. But then as soon as I'm done, I start laughing my ass off because I mean, I like it when people scare me. I think it's great.
I don't really get scared, man.
No?
I don't know what it is. I remember like movies don't scare me. Any horror film, I don't really get scared. I used to get scared all the time as a kid, but I don't know, like when I was 15 years old, it just all changed. I think I got hit in the head with something. It just knocked out that one part of my brain or whatever. But I remember going to see the movie The Visit or with the grandparents that M. Night Shyamalan wrote.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I'm sitting there watching this movie. Everybody's freaking out about these mentally insane grandparents. Like, look over to see my brother, who's older than me by 4 years, cuddled up next to my mom. I'm looking around. I'm like, we're in our 20s right now. Like, this is not like we're kids or anything, but I'm looking around. Everybody's like freaked out, like curled up in their recliners because our movie theater has recliners. And I'm sitting there like looking at the screen, like, everybody really scared of this shit? It's just jump scares. And then I started figuring out that the grandparents were actually mentally unstable. And then that's
Right.
when I started to get nervous because mental health does scare the shit out of
Yeah. I mean, different things scare different people. I mean, I don't, it takes a lot to scare a haunter. I mean, it's really difficult to scare a haunter, which includes me. And so it's all the more fun when somebody does actually get me. And like, I don't understand the whole clown thing. Some people are terrified of clowns. Like they just like break down crying. And to me, even a clown with like sharp teeth and, blood coming out of its mouth or something, I don't get it. I don't find that to be scary, but some people, man, they just can't deal with it. They're peeing themselves and they're crapping themselves, and I'm just
Well,
like, I don't get it, man.
even when we look at horror movies, like everything's a jump scare now. It's so fucking predictable. It's not scary anymore. Like back in the day when I was a little kid, one movie really, really fucked me up, and that was the movie Tarantulas. The one with
Okay.
or the arachnid one, the
Yeah,
spider
yeah.
one. That one when the dude was sitting in a barber chair and he leans back and the thing just comes up and starts laying eggs in his mouth. I saw that when I was like like 4 or 5 or something, dude. And I swear to God, that always
Ooh,
scared me from barber shops.
that was way
Like
too young.
yeah, that's the thing. My parents always say, "You were way too young to be watching those movies," because they'd be like, "Go to bed," and I'd be like, "Okay." And then they're watching Friday the 13th out in the family room. I just peek around the corner and start watching it. Next thing I know, I'm afraid to sleep with the Chucky doll that was in my room. She's like, "You don't like Chucky anymore?" I was like, "Fuck you! I saw that movie, and you guys are assholes for buying me this."
Yeah, I really like the movies that are. I mean, jump scares can be kind of fun, but it gets boring after a while. I like the movies that kind of, you know, get a little more inside your head and they kind of make you feel a little uncomfortable. And it's not so much about the jump scares. I mean, for me personally, and some people don't agree with this, but for me personally, my favorite horror movie of all time is The Exorcist. Even though some people say, well, the special effects are dated, but I like practical effects much better than computer generated effects. And that movie, it just it disturbs you on a very fundamental level. It's not
Yeah.
just a pop scare.
The girl is fucked up for life after that. She told her mother that, that she was gonna suck cocks in hell.
Yeah,
She masturbated with a crucifix. Her acting after that movie, she was completely fucked up. She never recovered. I mean, there were
yeah.
scenes in that movie that were so just drastic and way advanced for that age. You're like, holy shit, how does anybody involved with that really get through it and come out the same way? It was an intense movie. But even like one of my all-time favorite movies that everyone considers not even a scary movie, there's no jump scares in it, but the anticipation of everything is what made it scary. Fucking Signs, man.
Signs, yeah.
That is
Yep.
my all-time favorite movie. They don't show you shit when it comes to the aliens, but the whole anticipation, them running through the cornfield and you're just hearing the thing go like running all past you and shit. And it's like, are they gonna come out and scare them? Like in a normal, average, everyday movie, yeah, they probably something would have jumped out and attacked them because people need that now. But back in the day, what made the best part about scary movies was they would literally show you nothing and scare the shit out of you.
That's why Jaws was so good. Even though it was an accident that they couldn't show the shark, it was so much better that they couldn't show the shark.
That is literally my all-time favorite movie, and I'm about to sing this, and you better sing it with me. Show me the way to go
Go
home.
home.
I'm tired
Tired
and I
and I wanna
wanna
go.
go to bed.
I forget the lyrics.
Dude, I remember like my whole senior year or summer of senior year, I was doing jet skis, and every day I came home, AMC just had this thing on a fucking continuous loop. So I would just sit there with a bag of goldfish, and every time the shark would come out of the water, I would put the goldfish and take a picture of it inside the shark's mouth. I
That's
love
cool.
I love horror films, dude. They have a great place, but I really like the older classic ones. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre was always nuts. Now the ones that really get me are like the ones like Saw, where they give you a challenge, but it's like, would you rather stick a piece of glass in your eye or stab the person in the neck beside you? I'm like, well, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at least those ones, there you have to think about it. I mean, it is gory and graphic, which I'm not a big fan of, like torture porn, but those ones have some kind of a element to them where you actually have to think, and you sort of imagine yourself in the situation, and it's not just people getting hacked into pieces or whatever.
What do you typically find most interesting about acting, I would say?
Um, well, let's see. I mean, I've done the haunted house acting. I've done a little bit of on camera acting, and I've also done a little bit of voice acting. And it doesn't matter which version of it that you're doing. I think for me, it's being able to essentially, play pretend. I mean, that's how it started when I was a kid. Was I would see Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and I thought, oh man, how cool would it be to just like have that escapism of like pretending to be somebody else and live in somebody else's you know body and mind for a little while, and in a lot of ways just kind of play pretend like you did when you were a kid. And so I kind of took that into my adult life like a lot of people do. And I didn't really pursue acting a whole lot because I was very, I grew up in the 80s, and it was basically just like the Breakfast Club where everybody was getting picked on and there was all the cliques, and it was, just a bunch of shallow people and stuff like that. And I was a nerd and I got picked on and whatnot. So I didn't pursue acting until like my mid 20s. And I just started to kind of like dip my toe in the water. And then I started working at Spooky World where I do the haunted house stuff. And that was able to help me kind of come out of my shell a little bit, because it's like it's 80 acres and there's thousands of people there and there's hundreds of employees. And then I started to look at like local casting agencies, and I'm still kind of a quiet introverted guy in general, but I really do like, as far as acting goes, that ability to come out of yourself and be somebody different. And if you get to see yourself on TV or in a movie or something, hey, that's cool too, make a little bit of money maybe. But really it's a lot about sort of creating a character and then channeling some bit of who you are into this other person, and then having it come out and look actually real and convincing. That to me is just amazing. When I see actors that are really, really good, I I don't see the actor, I see the character. And to me that is so impressive. And I want to be able to do that while also playing pretend and having fun.
That's where I can kind of relate to you a little bit too. I never decided to pick up acting, even though I know I would be pretty good at it with the amount of facial expressions I can do, with the amount of how I can fall into character with it and really get myself into a scene and be able to memorize lines. I was always really good at doing stuff like that in drama club. But then I was just so afraid of what people thought of me. So I'd be afraid to get up on
Right.
stage. I'd get nervous. And as soon as I get on stage, I'd be like, I have to shit. And it made it very difficult, and I ended up putting it on the back burner, which I kind of miss. And I really like, well, now that I'm older, I look back and I'm like, who gives a fuck? You know what I mean? Like, why did I ever give really that much of a shit about what other people thought that I don't even see ever? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And man, as much as voice acting is fun, like I obviously have a lot of range when it comes to like voices and stuff. I mean, from like a broadcaster voice to like people always say I have a good speaking voice, but
Yeah.
much like you were telling me before, you hate the sound of your own voice. That's me too, man. I listening to myself in a recording, I want to take two pencils and stick them as far as I can in my ears. It's just we all hate our own voice. I think it's because when we hear it, it's different than when we hear it in a recording because
Yes.
it's reverberating off our bones and everything. So it sounds different to us. And then when we hear it, we're like, oh, is that what we sound like? We sound like fucking, like two chipmunks fucking in a dumpster. Like, what? That's terrible. I would hate to hear myself. And
No, yeah, I know what you're saying. And honestly, like I've started to get over that, because once a month I get together with basically in a Zoom room to go over scripts and read commercial scripts and things like that with my voice acting coach. And I record them and I play them back and I edit them. And I've actually gotten used to hearing the sound of my voice. And after a very long time of not liking it, I'm actually kind of getting used to it, and I do like the sound of my voice, but that's only after like more than a year of practicing and learning with my voiceover coach.
you basically have to force yourself to get used to it. Like
Exactly.
I literally want to, when I'm doing a podcast, I want to start leaving like subliminal messages to me when I'm recording. So I'll be like listening, and next thing you know, you just hear me go, "Fuck you! I know you're listening to me, you son of a bitch." And then I'm like, "What? What?" Like editing, like, "What that? What did I just say to myself? I'm leaving myself bad messages. What's happening?" I'm like an ex-girlfriend calling your voicemail back when voicemail was a thing and people had to leave messages. Hi, would you like to buy home insurance? Well, let me tell you about a good premium quality home with a 25 down payment on a house and a boat in the backyard with Ryan Reynolds licking a lollipop. I'm like, well, shit. Why was that a voicemail? I should have took that call.
Ryan Reynolds is awesome.
He is. He actually probably plays my favorite superhero, not Deadpool, Green Lantern.
Yeah, I haven't even seen that movie. It was so terrible. I didn't even want to see it, but
God damn it. Why did you say that? I was like, everyone shits on that movie, but I'm like, it's the only movie that has a Green Lantern or has Green Lantern in it. So it's my
it's true.
favorite.
It's true. It's the only one. That is true.
He's my favorite superhero, but no one ever does it justice.
He is a great superhero. I mean, I really do like Green Lantern in the comics, and in the cartoons, so did you see Deadpool?
I did see both Deadpools, and I'm hoping to see the third one when it comes out.
Yeah, I loved it when Ryan Reynolds was doing the stuff. I think it was at the end of the first one. I don't remember, but he's doing all these things where he's going through and seeing, like he finds himself reading the script for Green Lantern, and he shoots himself. Deadpool shoots him and kills him before he can read the script.
The new one that's coming out, it's a Christmas one. They made it PG-13. So they have they only get to say the F word twice and say the word shit 3 times. So they have to try and spare it. And he blows it all in the first minute. So then the rest of the thing, he's using the beeper clicker to bleep himself out. He goes, "Are you censoring yourself?" And he's like, "Yes, I am." And he keeps censoring things. But it's funny, dude, because like a character like that or an actor like that, like let's look at Jim Carrey, a guy who truly immenses himself in his roles, like
He
really
does.
brings himself into character to points where people are like, you can't even talk to Jim anymore because it's not Jim. He's
Yeah, I've
just a
heard
whole
that.
nother person. And like
Yep.
it gets scary to be with. But I mean, like the actors like the Joker, um, Keith Ledger's or like all these types of people. I mean, th- there's something about it. I believe there's a lot of people out there with this type of ability, but like even with Christian Bale, he does one thing I could never do: the weight transformations.
Yeah.
Those things going from the machinist, where he was literally on the point of death, to bulking up to play Batman and Batman Begins, where they literally told him that he got too big for the part. So he had to
Yep.
do push ups in a lot of his scenes just to try and shed some of it off. Like, then he played Dick Cheney, and then he went slimmed right back down. It's like the amount of torture he throws into his body just to be able to perform a role. People always said like, "Oh, but he's an asshole." It's like he's an asshole because if someone didn't do their job by putting food out on a table properly, and he's going and doing all these things, he sees that as you're not putting in any effort and don't give a shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with, Joaquin Phoenix and the Joker. He lost all that weight, and Tom Hanks for Castaway. I mean, that's really not good for your body with those extreme up and downs in such a short period of time. And I mean, because you lift, that you have to take care of your body.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to at least that, because I'm a big fitness freak, that's just something I couldn't be able to do. But the amount of like being able to fully immerse yourself into a part and try and get into that role, I believe the first couple minutes is going to be difficult. But I think this is where I find fascination with Dungeons and Dragons, is because of the role play aspect of things. I always loved the role play. I always wanted to try LARPing. I wanted to try all these types of things because it's truly just releasing all your inner kind of anxieties and stress and just enjoying yourself and having fun.
Yeah. Have you ever played D&D?
I have never played D&D, and every person I podcast with that does a D&D thing is like, "You got to play it, bro. You got to play it." I'm like, "I know, but all my friends are crappy. Everybody's like, work, work, work." I'm like, "But let's just play 8 hours in Dungeons and Dragons."
Yeah. No, I mean, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for over 30 years. And most of the time I was a player, and I got to do that sort of, exploring the character. And again, it's kind of like acting. You get to play this character, and you get to, sort of get out your frustrations, and it's total escapism. And now I've really gotten into being the dungeon master, and I decided to turn it into a podcast, which is where Knights of Roleplay came from, and how you and I were able to get into contact. And I can't say enough good things about Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it's more popular now than it ever has been, because it's been talked about on shows like Stranger Things. It's been talked about it on The Big Bang Theory, and you got guys like Joe Manganiello, who's this big macho, tough sports like guy, and he's an actor, and he's very popular, and he's playing it. And then you have shows like Critical Role. I mean, it's just, I've never seen it this popular. When I started playing, yeah, I was picked on because I was a nerd. I wouldn't ever talk about playing D&D with anybody because I would get picked on for that. And now it's more popular than it has ever been before.
Well, it's so weird to see where the trends came. I mean, comic books and all these superhero type things. Playing Dungeons and Dragons was all fucking nerdy back in the day. Now kids are
Yeah,
playing it and it's the top thing. If you
it is.
play Dungeons and Dragons, you're fucking cool. Where
Yeah,
was this when I
absolutely.
was in school? What the hell? I was born too early, I guess.
Yeah, do you mind if I ask what part of the country you live in?
I live in Maryland, East Coast, next to Baltimore.
Oh, okay, cool. My dad's family is from Bel Air, Maryland.
Do you? Hey, that's where my grandpa lives. He lives out by the prison. That's all I know. I don't know how to get. I mean, I don't know the exact roads to get there, but I know how to get there.
That's cool.
That's always how it is when it comes to directions. I literally, during Hurricane Sandy that came down here, I took my mom was trying to get directions to my grandparents' house. I was like, just take this road, and this road, and we'll be there. And freaking got us there and everything. She's like, how do you know this without knowing what the roads were? I was like, I don't know. I just looked out the window a whole lot and imagining. I used to have an imaginary friend that was like the gecko from Geico, but he was
Yeah,
blue,
yeah.
and he would be running next to the car. I think every kid that actually had an imagination at least did that. And I don't know. I just learned the ways of the road from that. I couldn't tell you what fucking Highway 9 is, but I can tell you how to get to grandma's house.
Yeah, yeah. I just use landmarks. I mean, I can't give directions to save my life, but I know how to drive places. I just couldn't tell you what the
Oh,
roads are,
the
what the routes
worst is
are.
when someone's trying to give you directions and they like are trying to describe it like how they know it. You're going to turn left at the blue tree. It's like, what the fuck? Where is the blue tree? I don't understand where that is. Oh, you'll see it. It's not that one, but the next left. And you're like, can you just send me the address? I have GPS now.
Yeah, it's so much easier now. I remember I drove halfway across the country from New Hampshire to Mississippi and back twice during a period in my life that was just it was the hardest time of my entire life. But there was no GPS. I had to print everything up, on Google Maps, and I had them all printed out in my car with me. And I drove to and from Mississippi twice with all these printouts. I didn't have GPS, and that was really not fun.
Now, when it comes to your Dungeons and Dragons podcast, how many of you are involved into it?
There's five of us total. There's me and there's my wife, and then there's three of our friends. It is a home group that I started 5 years ago, and we just decided to start running it as a podcast. I decided in the middle of last year and started it in January. So there's five of us.
Like wine night, but Dungeons and Dragons.
Say again?
Like wine night, but Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, basically,
That's
essentially, yeah.
awesome. That's so much better than, I mean, you can still drink wine, but it's just better when you get the role play in it too.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a lot of fun, and being able to actually listen to it back, because I've never had that experience in over 30 years. But now when I edit it, I listen back to the episode and I laugh, and then I think, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or oh, that was really good, and it's really fun to kind of hear it played back because that's never happened before.
Well, are you the dungeon master?
Yes, I am the dungeon master, although I've tried to encourage the other players to basically take a turn, and I've written these battle royals where you make an eighth level character, and then you set up a map. Excuse me. And you set up a map, and then basically you just have everybody just kind of fight each other, which isn't usually the norm. Usually it's a cooperative game, but I've had like three people actually take the place of the dungeon master during the battle royal, because it was basically written for them. And I said, I just want you to try it. And it's not a story, but it'll give you an idea of what it's like to sit behind the dungeon master screen and run the game. And one of my players, I actually asked him a couple of years ago if he would run an entire campaign for me based off of one of the source books that they put out for their Ravenloft for the Curse of Strahd. And he ran that for me, and he had some challenges here and there, but he did a good job overall, and it was fun. But primarily, I'm the person who does like the regular adventure, actual play episodes of the podcast. And once in a while, one of the other players will step up and do like a one shot or something like that.
Do you prefer being the dungeon master? I always like that idea because you get to craft out the story. I feel like playing a part of it is cool, but being able to kind of create a story for people to follow in, much like the narrator. Whenever you see like an old, like I know one of my all-time favorite games is Fable. I don't know if you've ever played that game,
I've heard of it.
but a lot of that game, like you get to choose your decisions, all these types of missions and quests you get to go on. And the third one, you get to be on the road to reclaim your throne as king, and you get to travel, and these people get to guide you along the way. And as you get to the end, as a king, you have to make a lot of decisions. They do good things and bad things. The thing that kind of there's a giant darkness coming towards, I guess, the end, you would say.
Hmm.
And you have to have a lot of money saved up, or a lot of people are going to die because of it. You might be a good king, but there's going to be no one left in the kingdom, basically. So, it's those choices. And then towards the ending, whatever just choices you made, the good or bad decisions affect your character. Such as like you'll grow devil wings or you'll grow angel wings or something. It was always really, really cool to see that and be able to kind of control your own kingdom, because any game I find that you make decisions and choices and those choices affect the overall gameplay, it's
Yep.
just so much fun because it literally makes you feel like you can adapt the story to what you want it to be rather than follow something that's already
Yeah.
pre-programmed.
Yeah. That's part of what, to answer your question, I played as a player almost exclusively for um, about 28 years or so. And I really liked being a player. I tried DMing a couple of times, being the dungeon master, and it was okay, but I wasn't really hooked on it. And then about 5 years ago, I was still playing as a player in my regular group on Thursdays, which we have been doing for over a decade. And then I asked my wife and some of our friends who were like in a different group of friends if they wanted to try D&D, and they said yes. And then so I started to run adventures, and then all of a sudden I got hooked, and it was just for the reasons that you were just describing, where I was able to tell a story. And especially seeing what really did it for me was seeing new players who had never played before. Like when I DM'd for my group that I've been playing for decades, like they were a little more used to what happens, and they were really kind of set in their ways, and there was a little more drama and conflict and things like that, which some of that's okay sometimes. But like it was just like seeing new players be like, wow, and like they've never experienced this before, so they got really excited about it. And I got to tell a story, and I started to use stories that I liked from, like, Magic the Gathering and all these different things that I was into. And like I just got hooked, basically introducing new players to it. And now, like you said, like you like things where you make a decision and it affects the story. So I've had to learn over the years that you don't just railroad your players into this plot point, into this plot point. You basically set things up, and then if they go off in a different direction, then you just kind of improvise and you follow them and you change the story based on what they do. And I've just had all these discoveries, like in the past 5 years, of how great it is to be a DM, especially for new players. But I will DM for anybody, whether you're a veteran or not. But yeah, I'm really hooked on being a DM now.
Well, it's just the fact, like, you want to feel like you affect the story. You can play Monopoly so many times, but you're not doing anything. It's the same thing. Yeah, you can buy property and stuff, but it's already set out thing. D&D's like, you're coming across a cavern. The next thing you know, there's a magical chest. Do you decide to open it? Next, you have to have roll this certain amount of whatever points.
Mhm.
Next, the chest opens up. A fucking monster comes out. You have to sit there and fight it. You don't know what's going to happen next. You're trying to, as a character, you're trying to figure out what the dungeon master, how well you know him. How is he going to be? Does he like to throw random shit out at you? Does he like to play straight? Does he like to give
Yeah.
you prizes all the time? Your relationship with them too. If you have one buddy that you typically like to mess with the most and don't really like, you can sit there and be like, your guy's armor turned into a pile of elephant shit. You're like, what the fuck? Like you can do fun stuff like that, but you try and be fair. But it's those types of moments too. And then getting truly immense in it, like people that buy pieces and incorporate them into the game, fully kind of setting up the atmosphere, such as having drinks, having food, having things to make it a fun, because it is an overall hang. A lot of people look at it like you're just playing a board game. No, you're having an experience with friends. Like if you're going to a
Yes.
bar or going to a party or going to something, you're all sitting down and enjoying each other's company, truly trying to forget all your, oh, there's Chris, he's so cool. Oh, he doesn't, he's star of the football team. Well, maybe he doesn't want to be the star of the football team. Maybe he wants to be level 50 wizard. So why don't you let him be a level 50 wizard?
Yeah, it's a very social thing. You sit around joking and laughing, and you have food, and like you said, there's different levels of immersion where like we use music. I'm not sure if it comes across in the podcast, but we have background music that plays. If it's creepy, I play creepy music. If it's combat, I play combat music. And we use like a map, and we use miniatures, and of course all of our dice and everything. And we have things like hanging up in the room, that look like gothic, like dragons and things like that. So we really try to make the atmosphere very fun. And yes, that's a very, very social experience. So yeah, it's great.
What would you say the biggest factor that comes into your dungeon master games would be? Like, what would you consider the music? Would you consider the story? Would you consider a lot of the objective pieces, such as like the tabletop game parts, like little miniature figures?
Yeah, it's really about it's about storytelling. Storytelling. I'm sort of seeing this theme in my life right now, where storytelling is kind of at the root of so many things that I do. Whether it's creating a story for Dungeons and Dragons, whether it's trying to get a good read for a commercial spot, whether it's doing something on camera, like all of these things. I mean, even like martial arts. If you're doing martial arts, like you're telling a story with your body, you could even maybe put that into lifting. You can stretch it out to a lot of things, but storytelling is the biggest thing about D&D for me, and it kind of bleeds into other areas of my life.
How do you typically craft out a story?
Well, I think about like right now, the the campaign that we're doing right now, it is it is basically set. It's based on a 1989 Advanced Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting called Spelljammer, which is a combination of science fiction and Dungeons and Dragons. So you have ships that look like regular sailing ships. They're like flying around in space, going from planet to planet. And I like science fiction. So I said, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a campaign. It's going to be a combination of Dungeons and Dragons and science fiction. So of course, I'm thinking about all these science fiction movies that I have seen and television shows like Star Trek and Star Wars. So like if anybody that listens to the podcast, you will hear me talk about things that were taken right out of science fiction. So like if I'm thinking up a story, like I had one story, an adventure called Salvage Mission. And I thought, how many times have I seen in science fiction that, they're flying around in space and they come upon some like derelict spacecraft or something, and they go in and they explore it and they find all these interesting things. So I thought that would make a really great story. So, I kind of leverage the things in my life that I like and the stories that I like that I've heard or I've watched or I've read. And I basically take the stories that I like and I sort of try to put a new twist on them and then put them into the Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And every once in a while, I might get inspired by something completely random. And then that's the next adventure that I do. So I draw inspiration from basically all the things in my life that I really think are fun.
What do you typically choose character wise? I feel like for me, I always choose maybe a magician, or I use something that involves magic because I love casting spells. I know that sounds nerdy, but that's always my favorite thing.
Hey man, I mean, if you ever want to do a one shot over Zoom, I can run a one shot over Zoom and you can be a wizard and that'd be totally fine.
You'd have to teach
Um,
me what that is because all I heard is one shot, and I think of probably Shaq shooting 3 pointers.
a one shot is basically, um, excuse me, sorry. A one shot adventure is essentially something that is self contained, because the way that Dungeons and Dragons typically works is you don't just sit down and play once. That's like one chapter in a novel. The entire campaign, which can last for years, is a whole bunch of adventures that are all strung together, and they may have individual things going on, but they're all connected with a larger story. So if you have a one shot basically, it's completely self-contained. It's like one episode of a TV series that has no connection to any other episode of that series. So I love doing one shots, especially with new players, because I just make up a random story. It has a beginning and an end, and that's it. And they play through it, and typically, as far as I know, they have fun, and then you're done. But if you want to be a part of a D&D campaign, there's typically no one shots in a D&D campaign. It's one story that leads into another, that leads into another, and it's chapter after chapter of this larger novel. And then once the cam,
You
go
might
ahead.
know my buddy Joseph Muzo, who does the All D20 podcast.
I've heard of All D20 podcast.
Yeah, he's been on here before. He's explaining it to me a little bit too. But the way he does it too, it's back to back. Like each episode is leading into another story, into another story, into another story.
Yep.
I've had a few people that do the podcast for D&Ds. That's what I love about it, because you can turn that shit into an audio book. Like, you want
Yeah.
to talk about voice acting, dude, that's where it shines, man. Being able to create out someone's voice. Like, what is your best voice acting thing that you can do?
Well, so far, like I said, I spent a little over a year training with a voiceover coach, David Lawrence in Los Angeles, and he's a great guy. And like that there's so many categories of voiceover. It's not just animation and video games like a lot of people kind of think. It's commercials, it's the interactive voice response, like when you call up a company and you get the voice prompt person. It's if you go to a gas station and you hear this voice talking to you from the computer on the display terminal at the gas station. There's so many other areas that you can do voiceover in that is not animation and video games. And I would probably say that most of the scripts that I have read, the pieces that I've read during my practice sessions, they've been 90% commercials. And I've tried to do a couple of character voices, and they came out okay. Like I kind of borrowed a voice that I do from Spooky World and I used that in one of my reads. But really, like my voice, my brand is kind of like this. People say I have like a soothing, sort of soft voice. So I've done
I can
commercial
put your
spots.
voice into an audio tape for sure.
Yeah, so like I've done a commercial for this is just a practice, not like actually on TV, but like I read a spot for like golf TV, and David told me, he's like that this is perfect for your voice because it's kind of quiet and it's low key. And I read a spot for Johnson's baby oil, so I was talking about this baby and how you're taking care of your baby, and some of those scripts that I've read that are sort of like very soft and very comfortable, very relaxing. Those are the best kinds of reads that I have done as far as voiceover goes. But I'd like to branch out into other areas as well, and I will eventually.
Okay, well, how else do you want to branch out? I mean, you gotta
Like,
you gotta give me something here.
well, for example, like, I mean, doing commercials is sort of like it's like the number one thing typically that I think it's the moneymaker thing for most voiceover people. If you can get into animation and video games, it's really good money, but it's so hard to get in there because you have actors and all these A-listers that are usually the ones who are doing the voices. I would like to do the interactive voice response stuff where you call up on the telephone. It doesn't sound like it's very interesting, but it's not a whole lot of work, but you get paid a lot of money for it. So I want to do that. I do want to do voices for animation and video games. I do want to do commercials. I do want to do audiobooks, both fiction and nonfiction. I mean, I want to basically dip my toe into every different aspect of voiceover that I can. So I want to explore everything at some point.
I want to do some more audiobook style when it comes to like crafting out like a medieval story or something. Like two adventurers on a mission to chase after the golden dragon. And then like do something like that. And then like we gotta get the chalice or do something like that. But I also want to do the commercials for like boner medication that you see on TV or something. Like if it's been up for 4 hours and I can't get it down. So I tried this to be able to soothe my boner. Or I want to do the old person commercials where it's like, I'm having chest pains. Those things are always too funny to me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've done more commercial spots than anything, and it's weird because nowadays commercials don't want people that sound like that big sort of announcer voice. They really don't want that. What they want is people who just sound like regular everyday people. And so everybody kind of has their brand. I mean, your voice would be good for certain things. My voice would be good for certain things that might be a little bit different than yours. And they just want people that just sound like regular people now. They don't want that DJ, that really big booming voice anymore. Although you might have something like, here's a truck commercial. So they might want somebody with this giant booming voice for a truck commercial or something. Or you might have an announcer at like a demolition derby and they want some big announcer guy for a demolition derby. But
Dude,
typically,
oh my God, hold on. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, go
you
ahead.
just said a demolition derby. I went, oh, dude, I can't believe I just remembered this. Okay, so I went to this monster truck show type thing
Okay.
at this civic center in Salisbury, and they had a bunch of Jeeps, and the whoever made the dirt jumps or dirt ramp things for the Jeeps to jump over made them way too close together. Every single Jeep broke in the first minute that they started driving. Literally, it was so funny because the first Jeep goes up, it was supposed to be like a trick thing. So they were supposed to do as much of the jumps and much of the track as much as possible in a certain amount of time. Whoever gets the best lap record and the most points as well. Um, First Jeep goes up, it's like a Jeep Cherokee goes up. Next thing you know, his car stalls out and thing, whatever, it was dead. Next one goes up, same thing. third one goes up. It's all after the first jump, hits the first jump, and then literally the axle hits the second part of the jump, and the thing just breaks and stops. And then all you hear is the announcer go, "Oh man, you gotta be shitting me!" And like it was everyone, like it was like 6 of them broke. And he's like, "Folks, we're gonna take your money. We're gonna give it back to you. We're so sorry. If you bring your ticket back tomorrow night, we're gonna make sure we have a better show for you and everything." Everything broke in the 10 minutes. I was like, this is supposed to be a 3-hour show.
That's a pretty good accent you got going there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That Southern accent is what fucking made it. I had a video on my phone. Actually, hold on a second. This is where Instagram comes into handy. Holy crap. We're about to witness some magic here. Hang on a second.
Okay.
Soothe me with a background tone until I can find this. Sell me some insurance.
Sell you some insurance, huh?
Yes. Tampax, please.
Oh, Tampax.
Tampax insurance.
Here's insurance in case you bleed out.
I love that.
In case you bleed into your pants.
In case you have an accident or here it is. Ready? We're at a monster truck show. He goes, "Oh, I don't know if you heard him, but he goes, you gotta be kidding."
I did hear it.
Dude, it was fucking priceless. Oh my God. Thank God for video. Now everybody out there is like, wow, he was telling the truth. Yes, I was.
Is that something that you're into? Are you into monster trucks?
No, that my buddy is his name's Forrest. He's a like hardcore redneck. This was way back like my senior year of high school. And he wanted to go to this monster truck show, so he went with his mom. Rest in peace. But it was, dude, it was the freaking craziest thing in the world, man. The first 10 minutes, we drove an hour and a half to get there, and freaking it was over.
That's cool. What kind of stuff are you into? I mean, I know you lift, and I know you do podcasting, but that's about all I know about you.
I'm a bit of a fitness freak. Mostly, I'm into a lot of stuff, dude. I'm mostly interested in what anybody's really interested in. I love listening to people talk about their interests and themselves too. But I'm really just I love talking to people. You get to learn a lot about people too. I mean, I really am a big medieval influenced person when it comes to ancient history. Love Greek mythology. Love the old school arts of the gods, folklore, different types of religion. Really anything that is super interesting to me really focuses on just learning more and more and more, such as finding out government projects or just different types of things to be able to really kind of just get my attention. I mean, I barely sleep, so it's like keeping my mind occupied is like the best thing for me.
Okay. Are you when you lift, are you like going for gains, or are you trying to stay like lean, or
I stay around 3% body fat probably for the past 7 years now.
Wow, man.
That's good. It sucks, but it's fun though. I like it just because it's like people have forms of therapy. For me, grabbing that weight is therapy, much like probably playing Dungeons and Dragons with your friends is therapy. You know, being able to, after a long day, sit down and be able to craft out a game or something. That's gotta be some of the most enjoyable things in the world.
It is. I mean, escapism, I mean, whether it's movies or TV or you go and you watch sports or whatever. I mean, for me, Dungeons and Dragons it's so immersive. That's the thing about it, is that you can do a lot of things that are similar. You can play board games that might be kind of a similar theme, but when you really get into that moment, excuse me, in the game, when you're just completely lost in the story, and people are getting like emotional, or they're getting excited, or they're getting stressed a little bit. It's just the escapism is just, it's just really awesome. I mean, I can't, there's no other experience out there like D&D. It's just awesome, and you really should play it sometime.
When it comes to really kind of what you try and focus on, or what you want to improve about Dungeons and Dragons games that you create, what are you trying to work on the most? I mean, we can talk about how much fun you're having, but there's always something in your mind that's like, I could have did this better.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like, I listen to podcasts, and I watch, shows where they have people who are playing D&D, and I get to see how other people do things. And I've asked myself, what area of my Dungeons and Dragons DMing do I want to improve upon? And I feel like, when it comes to doing combat encounters, I feel like I'm pretty good with that. When it comes to making rulings, I'm pretty good at that. When it comes to writing the story, I think I'm decent at that, but I feel like I could be better because there are times when, I'll watch uh, Critical Role, for example, and there are times when, like, I'm sitting there like crying because of the story that the DM that Matt has set up, and I thought to myself, how many times during my career as a dungeon master, which again's maybe been mostly in the past 5 years, like how often have I had people move to tears? And it has happened a couple of times. I have done that, and I want to kind of work on improving the story. I want to create more characters that are outside of the players, like more of the non-player characters that are existing in the world that I create. I want to make them into um, people who are more fleshed out and who are more unique. And I want to have stories going on within the stories. And I guess to answer your question, storytelling in general and making a more compelling story where there are lots of characters that interact with the people that I'm playing with, to kind of make that dynamic a little more interesting. I guess I'd say that's where I want to improve the most. But I'm still having fun and people seem to enjoy it, so I'm
More
doing
like
all right.
you want to create a connective experience too. I
Yeah,
mean, what really makes anything really interesting to listen to is the fact of it being relatable. For me, like my dad always used to say this because my dad was a DJ and then like a radio during the day, then a DJ at night.
yeah,
I
yeah. Your
always,
family's broadcast, yeah.
yeah, I always used to ask him, well, thank you for listening and knowing a little about me. Look at you. I feel touched. Okay, but I do appreciate that though. But when it does come to the fact, like I remember him always telling me, like I'm like, why are we listening to nothing? Why are we just like driving in silence? And he goes, sometimes I don't like to listen to music. Like I just don't like it. I listen to it all the time. I want to hear the noises or the sounds, the music the earth plays, and that really stuck out into my head because I talk to people every single day. It's not an easy task. A lot of times you'll get into a really good podcast or really good conversation like one we're having, and sometimes you get into one where it fucking ruins your day. No offense to the person that's on it, but it's like they just don't give a shit. I don't care if we can't like if we just talk about you the whole time, but when you truly are like if you're on your phone, you're doing this type of stuff, I get it. It's hard to do an hour, but at the same time, when you're just giving me one word answers, I can hear you playing Angry Birds in the background. I feel like I failed as a thing, but it gets difficult. Like when I walk around, everyone thinks like, "Wow, you're so talkative to people. You probably talk in your everyday life." I'm like, "Yo, I used to be an extrovert, then an introvert, and then I went back to an extrovert. Now, when I go out into the world, I'm just silent and observe because I learned you can get so much more information by just sitting, watching, and listening."
Yeah, it's fun to people watch, and I heard you say in one of your podcasts, I think it was with Artur or Arthur, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but
Archer.
you had said that, you didn't like going through like the self-checkout. You didn't like all these things that are out there now that kind of separate us from each other. You like to interact with people and not, be isolated from people. So I thought that was kind of a fun thing that's kind of one of your goals, is to try to get people to talk and to interact with one another and to not be separated by, messengers and emails and self-checkouts. And you kind of have this goal where you want people to just talk to each other. And I mean, it seems very simple, but through your podcast and other areas of your life, I imagine, you're trying very hard to just get people to just talk to each other, and that's cool.
Well, it's crazy because you'll walk around so many times in the world. Like I see it when I'm walking around at work. I'll see people just not paying attention, not talking to each other, not being connected to each other. I I've not been in this job very long, but I've already made really good friends with all the people there because it's not hard to get along with people. It's not I'm not saying play a false act or play a false whatever, but just be yourself. People are going to like that, but everyone wants to live up to someone's expectations. People just choose
Yeah.
not to talk to each other. They prefer the silence because talking to people gets too tasking. It gets too tasking because we're so disconnected. Literally, when I walk into a room, I can feel a space bubble in between everybody. Like everybody's got their guard up. I mean, half the time I invite somebody, you probably thought it too when I sent you an invite. Like, who's this person? What are they about? Because we all have this mindset of, well, we need to be attacked or we're going to be attacked if someone wants something from us. And I'm literally like, let's have a conversation. I had a dude message me saying, how would this benefit us? Like, how would this benefit me? How would this benefit you? I'm like, well, how does what benefit you? This podcast. I'm like, it's conversation. How does a conversation normally benefit you? Like,
Yeah.
you
Does
get
it need to be anything else than that?
yeah, but even him messaging me now saying he wants to be on it, I'm like, it's fine. Like, I get it, but the way he came off, it was rude. I don't really give people a whole lot of chances if you deny me. Like, if I set up a meeting and you keep bailing and bailing and bailing,
Yeah.
I'm very, very understanding when it comes to that. But then once I see you really don't give a shit and you're just stringing people along, and then like I'll
Right.
have people that'll be like, "You had my friend on. I want to be on your podcast now." I'm like, you said it was a waste of your time. Like, I don't know how else to change your mind. I'm not just going to go back on it and then try and do this because there's other people out there that would like to talk, that would like to have this. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
help the people that are on the edge of doing it and wanting to do it and hopefully change the minds for people to try it. But
Yeah.
everyone wants attention. Everybody wants fame. Everybody wants to get their word out there. I get it. You have a message to get across. Let's do it. But at the same time, just remember the easiest way to get your message across, the easiest way to be, um, I guess, productive is the same thing you probably experienced with your podcast and playing Dungeons and Dragons. Be a fucking team.
Yeah.
You're
Exactly.
4 or 5 people going into a mission or a lair or a role or a story together.
Yep.
You can't fight against each other when you're fighting against things that could pop out of nowhere. You could have 100 spiders on top of you. You could have fucking the thing from Predator come out after you. You know, you never know what's going to happen. Life's a mystery. Working together is the best way to get to success.
Yeah, D&D is basically it's the ultimate like team building exercise. You really have to try to overcome obstacles and you have to work together. And sometimes people don't always see eye to eye, and that can create both some fun situations and both some tense situations. But you're absolutely right. Like, working together to get things done. And by the way, Predator, awesome movie, one of my favorites. I love it.
I had what do you call it? I work at my hotel. There's a dude brought his I guess one of those roadster bicycles, the really light ones that you use for cycling, like Neil
Yeah.
Armstrong types.
Yep.
And if when you don't pedal but you're just moving the bike with your hands, it makes that clicking noise.
Yes.
So I was waiting for the elevator and I started hearing that. It sounded just like Predator was running down the hallway, dude. I turned and then some dude goes, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Thank Christ." He goes, "What?" I'm like, "I thought you were Predator. I thought that was the end of my days right here."
Yeah, man, that movie is so good. Terminator 2. I mean, a lot of things with Arnold. I'm a big '80s fan, so I grew up with all these action movies with Stallone and Schwarzenegger and all that kind of stuff, and of course Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and yeah, I like a lot of those '80s action movies. I just think they're awesome.
You got to give me a Yoda impression.
Do or do not. That was terrible, but
That was
that
the poster that was by my desk in school. It said,
do or do not. Yeah,
"Yeah, do or do not. There is no try."
there is no try. Yeah, have you watched The Mandalorian?
I have not seen any of the new Star Wars. I can't sit through it.
Oh man, the Mandalorian is actually very good.
Dude, my buddy does a Star Wars podcast, and he's like, "You not seen any of like?" Whenever I come into a guest spot, I'm there for the what if episodes. Like I created an Ewok named Frank that's like the Incredible Hulk, but Ewok. Like has steroids and he has like a retractable penis that he hits people in the head with. Like I just do dumb stuff like that because I don't know any of the new Star Wars. I only know the old stuff because they were bonding moments with my dad watching those things. Like having the campouts I used to have all the time. Like I like getting in touch with nature. I like having a set to relax. I think what a lot of people, especially people that get up into their heads a lot, like myself, being ADHD and then an insomniac is like the worst combination because you're up all the time and you have constant energy. So when most people are awake for 12, 13, 14 hours, I'm awake for like 20 of those hours. And the whole time I'm in my head. So it's like, it's really hard to stay grounded to the earth and stay positive a lot. But I find that after a podcast like one like with you,
Mhm.
it's engaging, it's energetic. I feel like my batteries are recharged, but it takes me out of my own mindset.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. Like, I mean, I've had anxiety stuff going on here and there throughout my life, and being up inside your head can be a very dangerous place. It can be a very depressing place, a very scary place. And if you don't have something to distract yourself, to put your energy into, then you just sit there and you stew, and it just gets worse, and it really sucks.
One day as a society are going to get to a point where it's like we need to start working together again. We just got split up with all the technology and all these types of things. I do want to see technology take a really good turn when it comes to making holograms of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
At one point in my childhood, I thought that, Yu-Gi-Oh, when you had the card, you place it down, I thought the monsters would be interactive like the TV show where it would pop off the card and show up like Bakugan or something. That
That would
shit
be
was
cool.
amazing.
That would be cool. I mean, I'd love to see that I play Magic the Gathering, and I would love to see some kind of hologram pop up on the cards when I was playing. That would be sweet.
I think I own around 150,000 Magic cards sitting in my garage that I've never played a game of before.
Really?
I literally, for Yu-Gi-Oh, I went on this thing called tcgcardtrader.com, and they're
Yes, I've
like
been there.
a
Yep.
penny or two a card. I collected the whole Pokemon Pokedex. I got a whole binder filled of every single Pokemon card, and then I got all like literally a deck or a case of decks based on like samurais and all these different
Yep.
types of things
Yep.
that looks like Kaibas just sitting in the garage. Nobody play with, but I just like looking at them.
Yeah. Are you into like anime or any of that kind of stuff?
A little bit, yeah. I'm a big Goku and Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, all those types of shows fan.
Yeah, my wife and a bunch of her friends are really into it. I'm honestly not into it all that much, but they are into it and they love it. And I'm just like, yeah, I just don't quite get that part of nerd culture, but whatever, to each his own.
It's all how you kind of grew up too. I mean, when I was spending days in Florida, my brother's 4 years older than me, so me and him would I was very little. We would just sit shirtless in the middle of the kitchen watching Goku or watching Dragon Ball Z. What do you call it? Total Drama Action or Total Drama Island on the TV, watching Naruto, all these different shows. And then, me being an insomniac, I had it basically my whole life. So it's 1 o'clock in the morning. You're too damn lazy to change the channel or try and find the remote. So you're watching one of two things. You're watching a really weird Adult Swim anime thing, or
Hmm.
you're like a Japanese one where it's like, what the fuck are these people saying and why are we playing this? And then the other one is you're watching a knife commercial at like 2 o'clock in the morning, like, I got 3 knives for you. This one's $29.99, and if you call right now, it'll be $199. And then you know what this knife is? Sometimes you just gotta eat people. And I'm like, all right, I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I remember being up really late and seeing those commercials like back in the like early 90s and stuff. That's all they played at night.
The fucking CD songs.
Yes, yeah,
Fucking
the CD compilations. Yeah.
Oh my God. We got 50 songs on 50 CDs. How many songs is that a CD, Jim? Jim's like, that's one song a CD. You get yourself a deal right there.
It's only 5 cents per song.
Yeah, 50 tracks of Bobby Brown.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you coming out and doing the podcast, man.
Yeah, and this has really been a lot of fun. I enjoyed listening to some of your other episodes, and I think you're a great guy and you have a great message and a great podcast. So thank you very much for having me on.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. And I want to give you here a minute at the end to promote your awesome podcast. Let's get these people listening to some Dungeons and Dragons and listen to the man himself.
Okay. So my podcast is called Knights of Roleplay and Adventuring Podcast, and Knights is spelled with a K. It's hosted on Podbean, but you can go to knightsofroleplay.com, and we have all kinds of additional content there that I have, like the campaign journal and some of our house rules and all kinds of information about me and my wife and the rest of our cast. So please come visit us at knightsofroleplay.com.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode Out of the Blank podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode.